Conquest of Azeroth is a realm run by Classless ASCENSION server, which takes a little bit different approach than its predecessor. Featuring 21 completely new classes made from scratch, with original Warcraft 3 lore and theme. On top of that, we get all the changes to Azeroth itself from the Classless realm, and many more to come. On June 13th, level 60 is being unlocked, thus Alpha Realm will allow us to fully experience the new classes and endgame with original vanilla progression. Things are looking really interesting, so today we're going to talk if it's worth waiting for and my general thoughts about the realm. Let's dive right in. So the first thing we're going to talk about today are the newly featured 21 classes. Those 21 classes give us in total 69 completely new, redesigned specializations, which are totally unique, have different playstyles, and are really cool to play. They all have been inspired by original Warcraft 3 lore and entirely fits the theme of World of Warcraft. Things like Necromancer, Cultist, Barbarian, or even Starcaller, which is like original Tyrande class, Wardens that have been chasing Illidan for ages. You can find it all in Conquest of Azeroth. And it's not only that, you could expect that all those classes would have like very generic specializations, for example, Cultist having 3 DPS specs that don't differ with anything except for like spell changes. But the best thing is that all of those specializations bring completely unique kind of playstyle to the class. So for example, for a Cultist, you have 4 specializations, and each one of them is completely different because they play for a different role. So we have a Dreadnought tank that wears plates, a Dark Knight that dispatches his foe with a 2-handed weapon, Dark Caster type, aka Shadow Priest, that uses the power of the old gods, or a Dark Healer that embraces his insanity to further power up his healing powers. All of those 4 specs represent different old god that makes it even more spicy and interesting to play. They all seem to be very similar mechanically because they all use the core resource like an insanity, but each one of those specs interact differently with it. And of course, they kind of fill out different roles, so this in itself makes them different to play. Also, from what the devs have said so far, some of the specs will be better in AoE, some in single target, some in raid utility, so it's not gonna be retail-like where you just simply have a shit tons of version of the same spells on different specialization, aka Bloodlust for example, so each class can feel more unique and needed for the group. Of course, you might say that this will create many more problems with balance, and you are kinda right, but I think having those 61 specialization fixed is gonna be a lot easier to balance, at least to kinda usable threshold, where you can make all specs interesting, fun to play, and viable at the same time. It's all yet to be tested on level 60, as we're gonna get it in 2 weeks' time, so numbers are yet to be balanced. And I personally think that fun factor is more important than balance, although to a degree where basically everything is playable and we don't see like, for example, DPS differences of 30-40%. So I definitely prefer to play something that is fun and does slightly less DPS rather than going for the meta just because I want to have like 5% more higher numbers. That's not what I'm looking for. And like I said, I did test some of the classes previously, so the fun factor is definitely in there. We're gonna see the numbers on level 60. It's still in alpha phase, so many things before the actual release are going to change. But yeah, this is the perfect time to actually test things, check how they perform, and adjust accordingly. The classes themselves are definitely a thing, which should incentivize many people to try out the realm, especially that gameplay-wise they are really polished, well thought. They have very unique playstyle where you either have to care about a lot of procs, you have to line up many things to make it work, and we can already know and see if you did try the other realms from Ascension that they have really cool ideas and that they can make really great specs, as it was in previous seasonal realms before all the classless happened, which I think overall is not really that great, mainly because because there were just too many things added, which is very hard to balance out, and it basically led to only a couple of specs or skills being complete meta, and there's a very big difference between those specializations. So I actually think that previous RE system was a little bit more enjoyable, but that's me. Maybe some of you guys will not agree. Maybe some of you actually enjoy that wildcard mode. Draft was definitely better when we actually did have some choice. But yeah, this video is not about Classless. So like I already mentioned, classes very cool to play, very satisfying. There were completely new visuals added to the classes, which makes them even more exciting to play. New sound effects to the skill. So it's not only about the spec itself, but like I said, all the aesthetics around the classes are so freaking cool that trying out the classes themselves in a world that we already, well, too good, is still very enjoyable and fun to play. As for the world, there are not really many new activities planned for release, but let's face it, it's still alpha. The main thing they are focusing on are actually the classes. And knowing Ascension and their great ideas, I really wouldn't worry too much about like new stuff from content coming into the game. Let's for example take a look at the new released with Season 9 Mana Storms. They're actually so cool. They are polishing them as we speak with new things to make them even better. So they definitely have potential in terms of new content added to the game, except for the classes themselves. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would actually look for it a little bit closer to the release, where the classes will be actually ready to go. As for level 60 alpha release for Conquest of Azeroth, there will be standard vanilla progression if you want to try it out, but on Ascension there are many difficulties added to those dungeons and raids. So for dungeons we of course have Mythic Plus, which can pose a very big challenge to the lovers of 5-man dungeons and small group PvE. For raids there are also difficulties like Ascended, and of course raid trials that are made for the hardcore PvE guilds and raiders. We're all gonna get that with, like I said, standard vanilla progression, starting off from Molten Core, finishing on Naxxramas. I wouldn't expect the new realm to come anytime soon. I would probably give it a year until complete full release, so probably next summer. But it of course all depends on how the tests and alpha are going to turn out. Open beta is still planned after some time, so if you're interested you can also wait for the open beta, because as for now you have to either pay real money in Ascension shop to buy the alpha access, or if you're playing on Classless at the moment you can just farm gold and buy it off the auction house, as all the items from the shop can be posted on our auction house and bought via gold. When we are at the PvE subject and balance overall, what I'm really happy about is that in Conquest of Azeroth we're going to the normal numbers up from the ones we had in seasonal realms, especially the last Season 9, where the DPS meters we've seen are actually reaching levels of 50, 60 or even 70k DPS. It's going really crazy, and I actually love the original vanilla or maybe even TBC numbers when 3-4k DPS are being a thing, and seeing like 5k crit or even like a 10k crit feels like it means something. Currently on level 50, you can reach to around 1k DPS without too much gearing, so probably for a fresh level 60 it would be something about 1.5k, and when fully geared probably around 3-4k, which is like exact TBC numbers, which I absolutely love. On top of that, on the progressive realms we are gonna get the TBC progression as well after Classic, so it's even more exciting, at least to me, as TBC is one of my favorite expansions, probably the best from the trilogy, so I'm really happy for that. Another great thing that Ascension has in store, especially for PvPers, are the high risk mode, where you actually are exposed to the open world PvP and can lose all your stuff and gear when killed. This has kinda died out in recent seasons, especially due to no changes, but also due to the fact that the recent release of the mana storms actually make them the fastest way to level up. And considering how the game works, with all the prestiges, which basically reset your level and make you level up again for extra rewards, this makes it appealing to many people. Unfortunately, the PvPers have been hit the most for that, because nobody actually plays the high risk. It's very rewarding because every monster can drop you like item that equals to the item level or your current gear, depending on the rate to on level 60, and during leveling, it is based on the dungeon loot you can get along the way, according to your level of course. Previously it made it very appealing for people, but nowadays it's just too long, and simple excitement for the open world PvP is no longer a thing, which is kind of shame because let's face it, classic vanilla WoW, after they released, or actually before they released like battlegrounds and stuff like that, it was all about open world PvP. There were literally wars and warbands running around zones and stuff like that. Could be very frustrating, but after introducing after mentioned battlegrounds and other modal modes, it made it very excited to level, considering that somebody can attack you on like every moment and you have to be prepared for it, to fight for your life and come out victorious. The high risk mode in Ascension made it even more spicy, so I kind of feel that with overall balance, people were more excited to try out high risk and the PvP overall. BGs are very lively, especially the leveling ones, but the open world PvP is where the strength of World of Warcraft is at, and I think that the devs should really take a look at the high risk mode once again. For example, make it much more rewarding during leveling, or even on level 60, because let's face it, you are kinda putting your own equipment, so that means all the time you have invested online, so the rewards should be more enticing to play for players. We'll see how it goes, but like I said, the classes themselves could be a big factor in making the high risk leveling much more fun and worth trying out. We'll see eventually, but I have a big high hopes up. Also, if you haven't been playing Ascension, they have introduced 1v1 arenas, which in Classless was also pretty promising with all the builds you kinda could make, but it's gonna be even more exciting with all those thought out classes. Of course, a lot will actually depend on how the balance is going to turn out, but I always wanted to have such option in started World of Warcraft. Although the game wasn't really balanced about, of course, duels and stuff like that, but also in arenas it's kind of different thing because you had pillars to be used to your advantage and some classes were better at it, and it's also going to be the case in this one. The true complete balance is never going to be achievable, let's face it. There's always going to be classes or specs excelling at one certain thing, and it's still fine as long as every class can find some kind of niche that they're good at and just make it exciting and fun to play. Also, the experience gained on Conquest of Azeroth seems to be decreased by quite a lot in comparison to the main realms, so this kind of makes it exciting, at least for me, because it will be really cool to experience all the old world, completely new classes, see how it goes. Of course, over time it's gonna be boring once again to do all the same shit all over again, but same as main realms, you always have those experience boosters that can make it faster. Although even with those, you can feel that the experience income has been hugely nerfed. It's up to you, depending whether you enjoy slow leveling, but there will be so many classes to try out that you can level by so many modes like high risk, mana storms, standard dungeon fire leveling for like healers, PvP with battlegrounds. There are so many options that you can completely change your route every time you level a new character. With all this in mind, we're gonna get a true Vanilla Plus experience that takes us even further with all the new classes in mind. New modes like mana storms, for example, or 1v1 arenas, high risk system. It has never been seen in Vanilla Vanilla Plus content. There were some also mentioned about some custom zones and even custom raids that stay within the lore of World of Warcraft and just simply expand the world of Azeroth. Although for the moment I kinda see it very hard to make, as we're not gonna be staying in Vanilla WoW all the time. The server is gonna have a standard progression into TBC and Wrath of the Lich King, so there's still quite a lot of content to do. And like I mentioned before, Ascension team have had many good ideas that have been implemented to the game, as for example mana storms that can create repeatable but very original way of using, for example, the dungeons in this case. I would love to see some kind of interactive playstyle for open world rather than just world bosses and simple repeatable quests, especially that some of those activities were kinda made to farm currency to polish your build, and in this case it kinda goes out of the way because we don't actually need to farm those currencies as we are progressing normally through the talent trees and planned out polished classes. But yeah, of course we're still very far away from the release, so if you like what you heard so far and would love to try out the classes yourself, you can join up Core Alpha and try out the featured classes in a world that you already know and love while waiting for the Ascension team to do their job, which they are very good at, and see what new things the official release of Conquest of Azeroth will bring. I'm Venario, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, as I will be releasing even more Conquest of Azeroth videos in upcoming future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.